Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for April 24th, 2018. Call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
Item 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 2, pursuant to Government Code Section 94956.9B1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Calaveras Cannabis Legal Defense Fund and Trevor Whitkey v. County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras Superior Court case number 18CV43130.
Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we will go to closed session. Good morning. Welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for April 24th. Can you please rise if you can for the pledge? Mr. Lutz, can you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk.
Report of closed session. Item 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action taken. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code Section 94956.9B1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Calaveras Cannabis Legal Defense Fund and Trevor Whitkey v. County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras Superior Court case number 18CV43130. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you. Moving on, Madam Clerk.
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Is there any board member that has an announcement?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Board and ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce the town hall meeting held on 1st of May at the Independence Hall in the Arnold area. And it's a meeting held and hosted by myself as your District 3 Supervisor and Planning Commissioner Lisa Muteries to discuss the issues of plan development in the Arnold area and general plan, how it stands, and it's open to the public. And this is a county-operated town hall, not a campaign, as been stated in some periodicals. So it is a town hall for the county to discuss PD. Thank you.
Any other board member announcement? Staff. We have staff announcement. Ms. Galino.
Good morning, Honorable Board. I'm Kathy Galino with Calaveras County Economic Development, and I have a couple of exciting announcements. One is that our department, our county, is going to be represented at the Calaveras County Frog Jump and County Fair. I will have a booth in Mark Twain Hall, and we're going to be promoting a new economic development hashtag. It's Calaveras Open the number 4 business. So it's a new hashtag that we're going to be seeing if the community likes and appreciates, and I would really appreciate everybody coming to visit. And I don't know my exact booth number, but I will be in the Mark Twain Hall all 4 days. And also want to share that Economic Development, is looking to renew a partnership with the Central Sierra Economic Development District. Apparently there was a relationship there in the past. Was not aware of that. I guess there's a joint powers authority, and I met with those folks last week. It was really productive. It was a 3-hour meeting, a lot to talk about, and so looking at renewing that partnership. have any questions?
Chair, I have a question. Are you looking for help at the fair?
Absolutely.
Anybody
4
who's-
days, I'll have my sleeping bag there because I'll be there all 4 days. So anybody that wants to come help out, be greatly appreciated.
Especially supervisors that want to come and help out?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Anybody else? Great, thank you.
Any other staff announcements? If not, moving on, Madam Clerk.
Recognition and acknowledgements. Item 3 is from the Board of Supervisors to adopt a proclamation recognizing the contributions to the community by Barden Steveno.
Supervisor Garamendi, I believe this is yours.
Thank you very much. This is a proclamation recognizing the contributions made to the community by Barden Steveno. Whereas Barden Steveno, a fifth-generation son of Calaveras County and the last of his Steveno family line, was born in Angels Camp in 1936, graduated Bret Harte High School in 1954, and from Sacramento State University in 1959 with a degree in cultural anthropology. He served in the U.S. Navy as an explosive ordnance disposal unit diver officer in Hawaii and the Pacific. And whereas Barden served as Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Kirkwood Meadows during the late 1960s and early 1970s, where he helped create the ski resort and subdivision. And whereas Barden purchased the Shaw Ranch on San Domingo Creek near Murphy's in the late 1960s without a plan, but in love with the valley and the land. He saw an opportunity to reestablish a vineyard on the ranch that had been a major grape producer beginning in the 1850s and planted Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, and Zinfandel in the early 1970s, resulting in the growth of the California wine industry from Napa and Sonoma valleys. Now a major industry in Calaveras, wine provides an expanding agricultural and commercial tourism base. And whereas Barden established a winery in the Old Shaw Hay Barn in 1977 with first tasting room located in the cellar beneath the ranch house. Barden was instrumental in the rebirth of the wine industry in the county, and the winery was upgraded and developed until it was producing 50,000 cases of wine in its heyday in the 1990s. Although the winery was sold in 2006, it continues to produce wine under the Steveno name. And in the early 1980s, when the price of gold was rising, Barden saw an opportunity to develop a gold mine associated with his family for generations. He hoped to develop the Gold Cliff group of mines in Angels Camp, but faced with falling gold prices and local opposition to mining, the mine closed in 1989, and Barden found a different way to utilize the property. And in the 1990s, Barden became the point man for the Greenhorn Creek Golf Estate development in Angels Camp. And after locating investors, he and a series of partners built roads, the golf course, and Camp's restaurant before constructing the first developed housing sector, which is currently a home to many families. Additionally, the Greenhorn Golf Course and Worldmark Resort caters to tourists from all over the world. And whereas some of the more notable philanthropies include being a donor and supporter of the Murphy's Creek Theater, Murphy's Fire Department, Feenley Park, and Bear Valley Music Festival, he offered to use his winery and grounds for many fundraising events, and in 1993 served as the Grand Marshal of the Murphy's Homecoming Parade. Therefore, sorry,
Hang on.
got ahead of myself.
Is there any board comments on this issue?
I'd like to withhold my comments until after public has spoken.
If not, I'll open to public comment on this issue. Any public comment?
Al Gallant, Taxpayer Association. I heard of Barden Steveno over the years, but never really met the man until we had a controversy over marijuana, believe it or not. And he and some others wanted me to join a group that was working toward creating a regulatory ordinance that would meet the needs of the opponents of marijuana, but at the same time respect the property rights of those that were farmers, cannabis farmers. it sounded kind of controversial at that time, but I thought it'd be worthwhile invite him to speak in front of a board meeting of our association. And he agreed to attend, and it was a fascinating meeting. It lasted, we thought it'd be about a half hour, but it went maybe double or triple that amount of time. And he laid out the plan that he and a former supervisor and another person were working to try to help Calaveras County reduce crime and also controversy. And what he did, he analyzed all those elements in cannabis that are negative. There are some, and also some of the people involved in that business are not really the best examples of good citizens in our county, and because sometimes they trespass and wreak havoc in the neighborhoods where they work. Not all of them, but some of them do. And so he identified each of the things that he could find out from those that are opposed to cannabis to try to make a set of laws or regulations that would address all those, and then at the same time respect the rights of the cannabis people. And at that time, I personally am kind of libertarian, and when you talk about a big regulation, I almost automatically oppose it because I think we got too much government. And so I didn't join that committee. Also, if I joined that committee, some of my own board members who are very good people are strongly against cannabis. And I would be contributing to a pretty strong division within my own group. So I didn't join. And then, so.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Joan Wilson, District 1. I don't think I could have said anything about what Mr. Steveno stood for as far as cannabis was concerned any more than Mr. Scull already did. Thank you. He was an awesome person. He had the foresight to bring the wine industry here, and he worked very hard to do that. He also worked very hard on cannabis regulation. He will be sorely missed in this world, and may he rest in peace. I don't think he would have put up with what's going on today, but I wish he were still here. Thank you.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. 30 years ago, Mr. Steveno offered his vineyard to the Women's Crisis Line to have fundraisers. We call them Concert in the Vineyard. And it was one of the biggest fundraisers our program had at that time. Only a few notable people stood up for women's crisis in those days, and his altruistic attitude for giving back to the community was very much appreciated. And I was unaware that he had passed. I'm not on top of everything. So I will also say that he'll be greatly missed in the community for his contributions and his support for the citizens and the programs of Calaveras. Thank you.
Good morning, George Fry. I knew Mr. Steveno. I knew him pretty well. I used to go to the concerts in the vineyard where his winery and vineyard was. They were amazing. They were out on a grassy area, and there must have been at least 200 or 300 people that would go to the concerts. I'm saddened by his passing. He was an amazing person. Thank you.
Hi, Urban Gomes. I'm a longtime friend of Barton Steveno's. He was a dear friend of mine, and I came here to say a couple of words and hear the proclamation. I think it's due from his character and what he did for this community. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Supervisor Mills, you have a comment?
Yeah, my only comment is that we don't intentionally want to speak evil of anyone who's passed. That's really shouldn't be in our mind. They can't defend themselves. But I will speak to my time in the 80s and early 90s as a writer and a reporter for the Sierra Sentinel. And Patty Shires was very clear to me that you don't put your own opinions into anything. You tell it like it is and let the people decide. So there's much of what happened in those days that is not stated here. And it would only be by reading those papers back then that you would be able to see that you could sit in the bleachers and look at the overall that way, or you could have been there on the front line as Greenhorn Creek was being developed, or as the mine was being developed. I can recall many situations of being in those meetings literally for hours and hours. So there's so much more than just what is being said here. And we need to understand that we have a lot of people in these communities that volunteer a lot of time and philanthropic efforts, and this is just one of many. I just wanted to be sure that everybody understands why I'm concerned enough to say I won't be supporting this proclamation. It's probably the only one I would not support at this point.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Make a motion to accept. I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's fine. We have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Supervisor Oliveira. Any other comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Passes 3-2.
Now, therefore be it proclaimed, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors recognizes Barton Stevenow not only as an entrepreneur, but as a philanthropist who contributed greatly to his community. Passed and adopted on this 24th day of April 2018 by the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Gomes, could you please come up and accept this on behalf of Barton? Thank you.
Moving on, Madam Clerk. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is from the District Attorney to proclaim the month of April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Calaveras County.
Good morning, Barbara Uke, District Attorney. Today I have with me 2 advocates from my office, Kathy Howell and Katie Downer. Also Kelly Coyne from the Resource Connection Calaveras Crisis Center, and from the Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Rick DeBasilio. April is nationally recognized as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we are here requesting that you bring that down local to Calaveras County and recognize April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Calaveras County. As a community, we probably don't really want to think sexual assault happens here in our small, tight-knit community, but obviously it does. Just 6 months ago, my office did an attempted rape trial, and we were successful. That gentleman is now in prison. I use that term lightly, of course, gentleman. But just prior to that, my office sent someone to prison for 65 years to life, a man for performing sex acts on his own 5-year-old child. We have another similar trial coming up very soon. So while we don't like to think it happens here, it absolutely does happen here, and pretty regularly. Now, these cases, they're difficult. They're difficult because a lot of times it's one person's word against another's. The crimes happen behind closed doors. They happen in secret. For obvious reasons, they don't typically happen out in public. So they are difficult, but locally we have, all of our agencies are committed. We're committed to investigating the cases and seeking justice for the victims. It doesn't always work out perfectly. It doesn't always happen quickly. But any victims out there who might be listening, I'm encouraging you to come forward and take that first step to becoming a survivor, going from a victim to a survivor. We do have a lot of resources in our community, and as I said, we have a lot of dedicated partners to supporting victims and to seeking justice for them. Another thing I want to let victims out there know, and perpetrators, the law has changed. The statute of limitations for some of these crimes, depending on the conduct and depending on the age of the victim, and mostly I'm referring to children under 18, under 13, under 10, depending on the type of crime, the statute of limitations is quite long. It can be until perhaps the victim turns 40. Some of the conduct, there is no statute of limitations anymore. The law has changed, and it's changed in favor of the victims, and it's the one area of the law that does not favor defendants. So any victims out there who are thinking maybe it's too late, it might not be. So maybe have that strength to come forward, and even if it is too late for the criminal justice system to do anything, it is not too late to become a survivor. And Kelly is going to come up and speak about some of the programs that she has to offer and what they can do for victims and helping them become survivors. Our START team is still very active and going strong. That is made up of my office, Angels Camp Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, Health and Human Services, the Crisis Center, and Mark Twain Dignity Health. And we have also our forensic examiners. We have a team of 2 right now, sexual assault forensic examiners, and they perform the sexual assault exams for our county. Sometimes they also help out other counties, but they're the ones who respond any time, day or night, when a victim needs a sexual assault exam. Mark Twain Dignity Health gives us a room. They've given us a room for years. It is a secure room, and the hospital is not used for anything else except the exam, so that's how we keep it evidentially sound. And that is a great donation on the part of the hospital to our team. And some of you may be aware, and I know that Supervisor Tofanelli is aware. He's from his prior term on the board, and I'm sure that Mr. Oliveira has heard this before as well. But prior to our SART team, victims of sexual assault used to be transported out of county, as far as going to Sacramento and UC Davis, which is a fantastic facility. But if you think about it, that's just the mechanics of it. What you're asking a victim to do is get in the back of a patrol car, or maybe finding other transportation to go to an urban area, waiting in an emergency room with a cop. So what does that look like? And waiting their turn for an exam. They were very expensive. And down the road, when my office is trying to push the case forward, we're trying to find the practitioner from out of the area, line that up, perhaps paying some witness fees to get them to come to Calaveras County to testify. With our local SART team and what the hospital gives us and what our community gives us with our examiners and our team approach, victims can now go directly to the private exam room at Mark Twain Hospital. And it's not waiting in the emergency room, and we have our experts locally, and it's not that time and the extra resources, just the driving time, the overtime, all those little costs that add up. It's, I believe, over $3,000 per exam, and that doesn't include staff time and all the other costs on the back end. Here locally, it's $500. So our SART team, our practitioners, all of those pieces come together to save the county a lot of money, and save the county a lot of money over the years that it's been in existence. At this time, I'd like to bring up Kelly. Oh, just right here. I can bring you up anywhere. You're sitting right there.
Wow, I just startled the DA. That's probably not good. Good morning. My name is Kelly Coyne.
I am the director for the Calaveras Crisis Center and the newly formed and still developing Calaveras Children's Advocacy Center. You guys haven't heard a lot about that, but you will be hearing a little bit more today and more in the future. I have a few numbers for you. The Crisis Center and the Children's Advocacy Center focus on the healing part for adult and children who have been victims of sexual assault. There's the criminal justice piece, which is really important, and then there's the piece that comes after, well, during and after, and that's kind of what we help with, is helping people understand why this thing happened to them, helping children understand that, you know, this was not their fault. And adult victims, too, often feel like it wasn't their fault. And I think the message that I want to put across this morning is that, you know, that our society as a whole has come a long way in recognizing sexual assault as a crime. I have some pins that I'm going to give to you. They're a circle. They symbolize the No More campaign. I think you've probably seen it on TV, where you know, there's a lot on the news right now about sexual assault. But there still seems to be a pervasive attitude in the society that we need to question the victim about why they were wearing a certain thing, why they allowed this to happen, why didn't they say no more times, why didn't they fight, why? And really those questions should be to the perpetrators. Why did you feel like it was okay to take liberties with someone else's body without their permission? We shouldn't be asking the victim why. And it has been happening for so long that I think that sometimes it is something that has passed down over generations and we automatically do it without thinking. I have caught myself sometimes when we're dealing with a victim thinking, well, gosh, if he or she just wouldn't have. But that's not the way to think about it. We should have a society that's safe, that if people sometimes make a mistake and do something risky, they should still be safe. That's the kind of community that I would like to live in, and that's the kind of community I would like to see Calaveras become. Our Children's Advocacy Center focuses on children that are victims of crime, and they get counseling and advocacy services for free for as long as they need it. And we've done the counseling piece for about 1.5 years now, and then we just moved recently to Valley Springs, and we have the counseling piece continuing, and what we're going to add in partnership with the DA's office is a forensic interview room for children. So there's a safe place for kids to go and families to go if there is a crime committed, and the child can be interviewed following best practices. In the last 12 months, the Children's Advocacy Center has seen 127 children. So every single one of those was a victim of a crime. 40 of those were victims of sexual abuse. That seems like a really big number, but I think there's more. You know, we always talk about how 60% of these cases don't get reported. And I think that there's a lot of people who still are afraid to talk about this kind of thing. You know, there's humiliation. The child doesn't want to tell because, you know, will somebody believe me? Will I get in trouble? Will my dad get in trouble? Will my mom get in trouble? You know, there's all kinds of mixed emotions that goes along with this crime. And on the adult side of it, for the Crisis Center, in the last 12 months, we've seen 145 adults who have been victims of sexual assault. And I'm not saying that there were 145 rapes that occurred in Calaveras County in the last year. These are people who maybe didn't report, maybe there was a rape that happened to them, or this could have been something that happened in the past. So we see a lot of people come forward after the fact. They think they're fine, I'm not going to deal with it, it wasn't a big deal, you know, or I was too afraid, and then later things happen in your mind and you second guess yourself and you become depressed and anxious and all those things. So it's really important for people to get help. And they're not going to get help unless they feel like they're going to be supported. And so one of the things that we're doing this month, and I'll leave the flyers here on the podium, is on Sunday, April 29th, we're having From Survivor to Thriver, celebrating the journey. So wanting to get people from that place of, you know, being a victim of domestic violence and kind of getting along with their life and, inching along to that place where they're back whole again and they feel like that they are able to move forward with their life and celebrate life and be happy and feel whole again. This will be at the Pickle Patch. There's going to be live music. There's going to be food. It's just a place where people can come together and talk. We're going to have art. We're going to have a talking circle. We're going to have yoga. Really casual, kind of just building a community of support for people who have been through this type of thing. People who support those that have been victims of sexual assault are welcome to come. It's $10. It's from 11 to 3, and that's this Sunday. I am going to give these pins to Diane. The circle symbolizes the O in no, for no more, and also 0, which is the number we would like to see when we talk about sexual assault in Calaveras County and California and the United States in general. I have some extras that I will leave here. Kathy Howell from the DA's Victim Services Office is going to speak now.
Hi, good morning. Kathy Howell, Victim Services Program Coordinator. I just wanted to say thank you for your ongoing support and acknowledgement that this does happen in this community. It doesn't only affect people in the moment, it doesn't affect them for a week, a month. This affects victims for a lifetime. And your ongoing support recognizes and helps them become a survivor of something that they didn't think they'd ever be able to get through. My advocates work with victims of all ages. It's not just a victim, it is their families, and it is the entire community that is affected by this. So again, I just want to say thank you for your ongoing support and acknowledgement and recognition to this event. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Being part of the SART team has been an honor for me. When I was a detective, I think I've made it aware before that I specialized in child abuse and adult abuse, and it also involved sexual assault. I've dealt with a lot of those cases and actually have seen them completed to where the guys have been put in prison. So it's a good thing as an investigator, and Supervisor Oliveira can attest to that. As a police officer, as a cop, you really get enjoyment out of being able to help these victims. And they are true victims. And a lot of the cases that I dealt with, that some of the things that they talked about, happened years ago. And they finally get enough courage to come forward. And it takes a lot, I think, for these folks to come forward and bring that out in the public, because it ends up being a somewhat of a public thing where they're having to confront the bad guy. It's tough for them to bring that out in the forefront, to know that people are going to find out that they were sexually assaulted. So I give these victims a lot of credit. The SART team, it's a sexual assault response team. They've done fundraisers in the past. They have another fundraiser that's going to be coming up sometime this summer. They will bring that forward with the date. They don't have a date right now, but it's something that we as a community need to get behind and support, because it does help support that response team. So thank you for your time.
I have the proclamation. Does one of you want to read it? Oh, Mr. Clapp.
I think Supervisor Clapp is going to read it.
Board of Supervisors proclaim the month of April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Calaveras County, whereas the high rate of sexual violence in California must be brought to public focus because it cannot be reduced until it's openly recognized and addressed, and whereas every citizen of Calaveras County is directly or indirectly affected and impacted by sexual violence, and whereas children as young adults are most at risk of sexual assault, and whereas during the 2017 calendar year, the Calaveras Crisis Center assisted 92 survivors of sexual assault, 36 of whom were under the age of 18. whereas statistics indicate that 60% of sexual crimes go unreported, and whereas it is also important to recognize that victims' blame within the criminal justice system is a barrier to reporting sexual crimes, and whereas it is important to recognize the heavy burden of shame and sadness carried by victims of sexual assault, as well as the courage and challenges faced by survivors and their families and friends as they struggle to cope. And whereas a sexual assault response team, START, exists in Calaveras County that includes 2 sexual assault forensic examiners, SAFEs, the Resource Connection, Calaveras Crisis Center, Mark Twain Medical Center, Calaveras County Sheriff's Office, Angels Camp Police Department, District Attorney's Office, and Calaveras Health and Human Services Agency to help effectively respond and address sexual assault crimes.
Is there any board comments? Supervisor Mills?
I'd only like to say thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of the children that are out there. I'm sure at times it's almost that you need to go through stress debriefing to deal with some of the effects, and most of it, as first responders can tell you, fire departments can tell you, there are many things that linger on long after the case is closed. So thank you for what you're doing and the effort that you put forward to help secure our children in this county.
Any other board comments?
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure that we understand that these events, when they occur, they don't end right away. As they go through the criminal justice system, the rehabilitation systems for the victims, things of that sort, this is a long, long period. And the sheriff and the district attorney are absolutely correct. These leave scars, not only on victims, but on people involved in this type of operation. Our first responders, our counselors, our volunteers at the women's centers, they're all involved in this. We cannot neglect and not provide the help they need. I'm fully in support of this proclamation. Thank you, Chair.
Public comments. Any public comments on this item?
Probably know I'm all about gender equality. I think equal opportunity should be afforded everyone. I think women should have as much right to be as big a jerk as any man that's ever lived. But there's one area that I hope women never catch up, and that's the area of rape. I'll be talking about stranger rape, acquaintance rape, spousal rape, incest, sodomy, any sexual activity against one's will. Most rapists are men. Quite a men rape. We might think they're horny and they don't have enough sex. Well, it's not about sex. It's about power, control, domination, humiliation, degradation, and sometimes brutalization. Most rapists cannot get an erection, so they get angry, and they'll force their victim to perform oral copulation. If they're able to achieve an erection, they often cannot achieve ejaculation. That makes them angrier. Oftentimes, the victim will be beaten, strangled, mutilated, and sometimes murdered. Men don't just rape women. They rape children. Sometimes they abuse animals. Sometimes they abuse other men. Hear about prison rape happening. It's about power and control. Sex is used as a weapon to gain power and control. And rape is not relegated to just relationships between people. When people are trying to get power and control, we can see it extend to other areas, like politics. I'm going to crush my opponent, humiliate him. We see it extended to corporate boardrooms, businesses, to put someone else out of business and have all the control that they need. We've even seen it in the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Usually at the beginning of the year, when certain people are denied opportunities to serve in certain positions, it's cheap power. Usually men are the needy ones that need to have cheap power. So we need to look at ourselves and understand often in our own lives we need to be compassionate and considerate of other people. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
George Fry. I'm a retired state parole agent for the California Youth Authority. And I worked the victims program in Bakersfield for 3 years. I am so totally in favor of this proclamation today. We have to stop this kind of stuff going on. Thank you. I think I'll take one of these little pens.
Any other public comments?
Joan Wilson, as wrong as it is for a rapist to rape mainly women, it's also wrong for a woman to go out on a date, decide to have sex, and then regret it the next day and say she was raped. It is wrong for the man that was involved, and it was wrong for the woman that was involved. We as human beings need to treat each other with kindness on both sides. I've been a victim. That person was never brought to justice because the doctor said it would be best for me if that didn't happen. I have struggled with this my entire life. It tore my family apart. And I have seen both sides. I have seen women claim that men raped them when they were not raped. And that makes my struggle even harder. I hope you support this proclamation. It is something that definitely needs to be brought to light. Thank you very much.
Other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Board comments at this time? No? Supervisor Clapp.
Therefore, be
No.
it proclaimed that the
Don't we
Board
wanna-
of Supervisors...
Do we want to move the item?
Well, we do need a motion.
Okay,
Thank you. I so moved.
So we have a motion by Supervisor Mills.
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Now Supervisor Clapp.
Be it further proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors encourage all citizens to honor the important work done by all the members of the Calaveras County START on behalf of victims of Calaveras County, passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County, State of California, this 24th day of April 2018.
I'm always late.
Okay, ready? Yay, thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Public comments.
Proponent Randall Smith, District 3. I had made a decision not to come back here and waste my time with you guys. But today, Mills and Clapp, you disrespect the memory of Barden Stevenow. How dare you? The man was an icon of Calaveras County, and you're not. Shame on you.
I do not have a written, George Fry, I do not have a written proclamation. I have a verbal proclamation. And I would really appreciate it if Supervisor Michael Oliveira would come down here so I could make a presentation.
If you don't have a problem, that's fine. 3 minutes.
It's okay. I think I can accomplish that in 3 minutes. Come on. Spoken like a true law enforcement person. Michael, you need to have your own tea cup. I realize that Jack doesn't have his thermos here today, but this is for you. Oh, it is?
I don't have a microphone, but folks, I have to read this. Honorable Michael Oliveira, Chair, 2017, District 3 Supervisor, Calaveras County, California. Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
$700 for it.
Megan, welcome back. It's good to see your smiling face. We need you. Jack, congratulations on a yeah, I'm at a loss for words because number one, I can't believe these people wanted to do a recall on you, of all people. So congratulations.
There you go.
We found out how to open it, George.
Oh, no, it's, yeah.
And the instructions were inside, so.
Yeah. See, there you go. Buy you books, send you to school, and you eat the books. All right. I had the dubious pleasure last Thursday evening to attend a dog and pony show in Valley Springs at the Veterans Hall. The dog and ponies were Gary Toffanelli and Clyde Clapp. And Gary yelling twice to a person in the audience, just totally unprofessional for somebody that's a chair of this county's Board of Supervisors. That's all I have to say.
Good morning, Stacy Fairchild, District 1. Supervisor Toffanelli, I so enjoyed the verbal attacks from you at your town hall last Thursday. We're newcomers to the county, and I was still fine-tuning my opinion of you, so I came there with an open mind. It was my first opportunity to hear from you outside of these meetings, as you have not responded to the emails I've sent. which I hear is not unusual. But that little spectacle on Thursday expunged any doubt that I want to continue with the effort to remove you. The culture of Calaveras County is shifting. Baby boomers like us are retiring, and many are moving here from the Bay Area, some from LA. This group is educated, progressive, and active in its community. We don't give a damn about your glad-handing good old boy network, and we don't respond to bullies. You contend that the county is not broke, and I believe that. We're enjoying a relatively good time right now compared to the last decade of struggle. But thumbing our nose at $13 million per year of additional revenue is short-sighted. The national debt keeps our nation on a precipice, and the Butte fire could happen again. I would like to see this county poised to weather that next big storm. We need people who are forward thinkers, who will work to enhance our economic base and improve our schools, and not simply react to what is in front of them at the moment. Like it or not, cannabis in California is here to stay, just as alcohol was during Prohibition. Please review your history, and perhaps we will not have to repeat it. I've spoken to people who have been affected by the illegal grows. These are the unfortunate growing pains that come with change. But it's like guns. Banning only keeps them out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, and banning legal cannabis only creates a vacuum into which more illegal growers will migrate. Cannabis is the obvious new commodity that will grow our economic base. It makes more sense to improve the regulations, collect the revenue, and invest that money in additional law enforcement to combat the illegal growers. And perhaps some could also be invested in our schools. Calaveras County schools are not performing well overall. We need to do a better job of educating our children. Supervisor Tofinelli, I would like to see you spend less time attacking your adversaries and more time communicating with all of your constituents and rethinking your position on cannabis and other issues that affect this county. Supervisors Garamendi and Alveria, thank you for standing your ground. We will provide you with some additional leaders in the very near future.
Good morning, gentlemen. Used to be when in the 60s the lid was called a bag of marijuana, right? Anyway, good morning, gentlemen. How are you today? It is a beautiful, beautiful spring day out there. We're gathering signatures for two of you. One of you has their dog locked in their car after they let him defecate on the lawn, and I didn't see him pick it up. Maybe they did. Anyway, that's how you gentlemen respect this county. I see the weeds are out of control in the front here. Beautiful, just beautiful. I love the way this county is being taken care of and guided by such strong leadership that we have here. We have managed to somehow get rid of 507 legal tax-paying businesses that paid $13 million in taxes and over $3.5 million in registration fees. Do you know that they are asking us to pay that registration fee again, gentlemen? Again, with less than a month and a half. A month and a half. Pay $5,000 to be eradicated, and we might even be on a hit list that the county is now forming to go out and make sure those legal, once legal, let's say, once legal marijuana gardens are now thoroughly eradicated because they are illegal. And your actions have also put all of that cannabis after June 9th in the black market. Congratulations, gentlemen. You three have made criminals out of legal tax-paying businesses in this county. I think that's wonderful. I do not believe you three. You three are reprehensible public officials. I hope that Mr. Mills and Mr. Tofinelli, those recall efforts are not going to fail like Jack's did. And congratulations, Jack. I want to thank you, and I want to congratulate you. I had my doubts. I never had doubts. Actually, I had fears. I did. I really did have fears, but I never had a doubt that you would beat that. Thank you very much. That is Dignity Health, folks.
Hello again, Joan Wilson, District 1. A decision was made today to end my legal, registered, compliant, tax-paying cannabis cultivation business at the behest of the county and 3 supervisors that claimed, when elected, we're here to ban. My farm has always been and will continue to be compliant with county code. Code compliance may inspect my farm up to that time that my business is closed down, and others until June 9th. Many will work under the collective model until it sunsets. Myself and 507 other tax-paying businesses will be gone. You will then need a warrant to come onto any of those properties due to the county breaking its agreement with these commercial businesses. The county will spend countless millions of dollars in your personal war on legal cannabis, Mr. Tofinelli, Mr. Mills, and Mr. Clapp. You are also responsible for every empty storefront in this county and those to come. Numerous people that were earning a good wage are now settling for minimum wage jobs in order to feed themselves and their families. The federal government has already spent $11 trillion in its war on illegal drugs. What has your ban done to eliminate even one illegal grow? The sheriff has eradicated 2 out of 2,000 illegal grows in the last 60 days. Those were because of the DEA. When you came into office, there were 600 known illegal grows. Then you continually claimed you were here to ban, and numbers of illegal grows only increased. Now that you have banned, I have heard the sheriff's deputy told a town hall meeting in Glencoe that the sheriff's department now estimates up to 2,000 illegal grows. I did it wrong. Had I been an unregistered, non-compliant, non-tax-paying, non-fee-paying, illegal black market grower, I would have profited and continued to be in business. Instead, I became a victim of the Calaveras County ban scam. I will continue to advocate for regulation, like Mr. Stevenot, of cannabis in this county. By the way, it's going to be 80 degrees today, and I don't think a dog should be locked up in a truck. Thank you.
Bonnie Newman. I'm going to take a break from cannabis and go back to rape. One area overlooked in our community, it's been taken advantage of and exploited, is the IHSS home care providers. We've been out without a contract for 7 years. You heard from members of our union last week that they're going to be foremost and forefront and really fighting, but we don't see any of them today. I think it's depressing when we think that we had $2 above minimum wage in 2009. Instead of our union stepping up and negotiating a new contract in the past 7 years, they've let us fall further and further behind. So now our only wage increases are when minimum wage goes up. This is a job that goes far and beyond the minimal hours that we're paid and the minimum wages that we're paid. We create a bond with the recipient, the patient, the consumer of services that goes beyond what we're paid in hours and wages. And although most of us are caring for family members, there's thought that we should be caring for our own family members no matter what. But in order to give up a career where we could be earning 2-3 times what minimum wage is, we prefer to stay at home and care for our loved ones because we know our loved ones will not get the care they need if we ignore them, or if they're placed in a facility, or they're left to their own devices. So we haven't been raped as such, but we've been ignored and exploited for too many years to keep up this facade of having a union stepping up and supporting us and defending us and representing us. I'm not sure when we're going to be able to negotiate a new contract. There's a lot of talk of it happening, but proof is in the action, not in the words. So if it does come to your attention that home care providers are looking for an increase in wages, I hope you can find the money to give it to us because we certainly deserve it and you may need it someday. Thank you.
Good morning, Susan Morse, District 4, Angels Camp. What follows is the basis of my indignation. It clearly demonstrates the lack of understanding that one of our county supervisors has. In an official release, Supervisor Garamendi stated, quote, "Today is a victory for the residents of District 2. The petition for a recall against Calaveras County Supervisor Jack Garamendi has failed to collect the signatures needed to call an election. This effort, which began in October of 2017, is an effort to intimidate and pressure Garamendi during the debate on cannabis regulation, has been soundly rejected by the voters of his district, District 2. The failure of this recall is rejection of the divisive and dirty politics being played in Calaveras County. The recall proponents, led primarily by persons who do not live in District 2 that I represent, knowingly base their campaign on outright lies, assuming the residents of District 2 could not distinguish between fiction and reality," said Garamendi in his announcement. This recall effort was run by a radical fringe group and was a coordinated effort to intimidate me, meaning Supervisor Garamendi, and other supervisors who did not support their position on cannabis. These bully tactics will never succeed, and we will not be driven by fear or hate from single-issue special interests. I will not back down from my duty, protect the citizens of District 2 and this county. I will continue to strive to make our county safe, healthy, and prosperous. It is my hope that now we can all move forward with current county business, end quote. Mr. Garamendi, I believe an apology is in order.
Jennifer Stewart, District 2. I had read that in the newspaper, but it's far more profound when you hear it verbally, because I represent those people who wanted to remove you, Jack, and we are hardly the radical fringe. I'm a grandma, and 90% of the people that were trying to collect signatures were grandmas. When you said you wanted to claim the victory, I thought, Jack, you should have been quiet. You should have just accepted it, than to slam us all. Because not only did you disregard me and the other people in your district that were trying to do this, you disregarded and totally vilified everybody who came and signed. The people who have a legitimate gripe against being disregarded with their personal lifestyles that have been drastically changed by the advent of marijuana in our county. Anyway, though I rolled my eyes, I decided I needed to counter this, but by your own words, because your words were damaging to people, Jack. You said that the recall was a tactic to intimidate and pressure you about your cannabis stand. It wasn't that, Jack. It was an effort to get you to hear those voices that you continually disregarded. And we did it in a legal and public way, the way we're supposed to as people of the United States. That's what we do. You also said that we were a part of divisive and dirty politics. The truth is, none of us that were involved in this have ever been involved in politics before this issue came and destroyed our lives and my future, their futures, our kids. We can't do the same thing we used to do. You also said it was primarily led by people who don't live in the district, when you fully know by law that the initiators and the signers must be current residents and registered voters of the district. You said the effort was run by a radical fringe group that used bully tactics to intimidate you with fear and hate. We never even put a press release out against it, Jack. We just went with the people who had their own personal desire to come get the pen and sign it. Then, near the end of your statement, you said you would not back down from your duty to protect citizens of District 2 and that you would strive to make the county safe, healthy, and prosperous. I'd rather look to the sheriff for safety and protection, and there is nothing about your stand on marijuana that makes any family healthy.
Good morning, Board. Bill McManus. Late last year, it was in the fall, during one of the meetings, a couple items were on the agenda. One was to review the Board of Supervisors' recommended ban. Another item on the agenda was to review the dispensary ordinance 1791. During that meeting, Chairman Oliveira decided to have the dispensary ordinance put off 120 days. We weren't going to talk about it at the time. I'm going to talk about that in the future. To date, I have not heard, and we're way past 120 days of that review being on an agenda or up for discussion. Normally, as just a civilian sitting out here, we would think that when the supervisor, especially the chairman, gives some direction on an agenda item, that someone picks that up, that they write it down on their calendar to remind them in the future that this thing has to be done. What we find now is that the citizens have to keep track of this. We have to watch what you're doing and what comes before you. And it's not unusual that we see these things. It almost conjures up a notion, and I hate to say it, that if the citizens don't really watch their own government, staff isn't going to do it for us, and that's what we rely on. It almost smacks of a shadow government operating within Calaveras County, where we see the supervisors get their 2 or 3 meetings a month, and then the staff doesn't implement their wishes. We've seen it over and over again. We elected the supervisors, not the staff or employees. And this is not a knock on employees or anything else. I think it's part of a culture that supervisors are tolerated. You're only going to be here, 1 or 2 terms perhaps, and people who do the work are lifelong civil servants, and that's fine. But why is it that we have to keep such close tabs on our government? Because it gets away from us. It gets away from you. You have a lot of things to do. Now, we appreciate that. But there are details, and when those details are overlooked, the system starts to collapse. The cracks start to expand throughout our government. And then pretty soon, the first people who are affected are the citizens who can't spend all their time keeping track of what's going on. So later on in the meeting today, there's another agenda item. And 1791 was just one example. There'll be another example as we get on. I believe it's item 22. Thank you.
Mike Falvey, 44-year resident of District 2.
I was going to speak on one item. I'm going to speak on two. I changed my mind. Item number one is, I think a couple weeks ago, Jack, I told you, I can almost quote it, you don't have anything to worry about? There you go. And with the futile attempts now to denigrate your this decision, don't worry about it, Jack. I'd put you in 44 years in District 2, I'll put you in the top 2 of supervisors, my favorites, for many different reasons. I'm not going to tell you whether you're 1 or 2, but I'll put you in the top 2. Now, my second item is the proclamation honoring Barden Steveno. Number one, I did not see eye to eye with Barden Steveno on many issues. Not many, a few, but the man, his overall life work is undeniable. I'm at an age where I've lost quite a few acquaintances, not all friends, but people I know. And I at least show them the respect of a long life, to not throw mud on them when they're laying 6 feet under. And especially to do that in a public setting, I just find that mind-boggling. And for one supervisor to publicly display and orate on why he wasn't going to back a particular item, and for another supervisor to follow him like a trained puppy and vote along the same ways, when I personally have doubts on if this second supervisor even really knew Barden Steveno, and I will gladly stand corrected. But to see this, when a man has given his life to this county, it's sad. And folks, these are the people leading us into the future. It's disgusting. And I hope a proclamation never comes up for you two.
This will be the last speaker we've reached. You can speak, but that we've reached the 30-minute mark. So,
I've been to different recall Garamendi locations. One of these locations, a pot grower and a wannabe pot dispensary, stayed for 45 minutes to an hour talking to me. He said I should have more empathy with their cause. Any empathy I have has been directed toward the mother waiting at home for her child to come home when she's late because of any kind of mind-altering substance. My empathy is overwhelming for the people who've come to this county, invested in it, and are now still surrounded by pot grows. My empathy is very active in watching the wildlife, a coyote stalking a turkey, squirrels, rabbits, and hawks and eagles who are impacted negatively in their homes. My empathy extends to the children of the pot growers who have to endure the ridicule of their fellow students because they stink.
Chair, excuse me just a moment. I don't think the timer's on. Thank you.
It also extends to county workers who are forced by law to give benefit to pot workers' families while they are working in pot grows that don't provide any benefits. So if Supervisor Garamendi wants to refer to me and all those people who were involved in his recall campaign, the fringe, it is far from the truth. There is a silent majority out there who agree with us. 5,200 signatures were gathered, and a pot dispensary's lawyer got it thrown out on a technicality for the second time. The head of the snake is gone, but the dispensaries are still here. They need to abide by the ban and better yet get banned completely. The head is gone, but not in Calaveras County.
All right, that's the end of public comments until the end of the meeting. We've reached our limit. Madam Clerk has informed me. So we will take a 15-minute break and come back and start on consent agenda. All right, we are back. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Is there any board member wish to remove a item from the consent agenda? Supervisor Mills.
I'm sorry, number 12.
Supervisor Mills, item number 12. Anyone else? Any staff member wish to pull? Yes, Mr. Kroger. Number 10. Any member of the public? Yes. 12 and 13. 12's already been pulled. Okay, 13. Okay. Anyone else?
11.
All right. Is that it? All right. I'm looking for a motion for the remainder.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Motion by Supervisor Oliveira.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. Any further discussion? Any public comment on this items? Any of these items? If not, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. We'll start with item number 10, Mr. Krovitz. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Madam Clerk has to get it up on her.
While we're waiting, C.L. Lutz, could Ms. Galino be available for item 12?
Already.
Thank you.
Yeah, something on that. All right, Madam Clerk.
Item 10 is from Public Works to authorize the board chair to execute an agreement with Quincy Engineering Incorporated for construction engineering for the Stagecoach Road Low Water Crossing Replacement Project in an amount not to exceed $399,150 for the term of April 24th, 2018 through December 31st, 2020.
Now, Mr. Krovitz.
Thank you, Jeff Krovitz, Public Works. I'd like to continue this item to the next meeting for some corrections to the contract.
For some
corrections to the contract.
Any opposition to that from the board?
How much of a delay is this going to put on the project?
To the next meeting. It will not delay the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comments on this item? Seeing none,
Can we have a motion?
I haven't got a motion. I'm going to call for one right now.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to continue this item?
So moved.
That was motion by Supervisor Mills.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second by Oliveira. Any other discussion? Not, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It's been continued, Mr. Probert. Madam Clerk, item number 11.
Hello. Item 11 is from the Sheriff's Department to approval and signature of Second Amendment to Services Agreement with Matt Brown to extend the term of the agreement through June 30th, 2018. The current total compensation amount of the services agreement is $150,000. This Second Amendment does not change the total compensation amount.
Mr. Segal, you told us you have a question on it?
Yeah, Allison County Taxpayer Association. Usually if you have a conflict between written amount of money and then the digital amount of money, the written amount would supersede. In this case, the actual wording is $150, not $150,000. So you might want to have this corrected. Thank you.
I believe that typo is just on this document. It's not in the agreement.
Oh, good.
So was that your only comment? And she's answered it. Any other public comment on this item? If not, I'll bring it back to the board. Look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Mills.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second by Oliveira. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, item number 12.
Excuse me, point of order. Did you ask for public comment?
I did.
I missed it, sorry.
Item number 12.
Item 12 is to adopt a resolution authorizing the submission of the Calaveras County Recycling Market Development Zone application.
Supervisor Mills, you pulled this item.
Well, actually, one of the members of the public did as well. I'd be interested in hearing what she has to say.
My question involves the recycling that's done at the recycling, at the dump sites. Is this in addition to that, or are we including additional materials like styrofoam and other kinds of plastics? And what monies are involved? What is the amount of are taxpayers going to be, is this coming out of general fund, or is this a money source that is applied to in a grant? And what's the difference between what we have now in Calaveras and what this purports to expand to?
Okay, before we answer that, any other public comments? So we can answer all questions at once.
I think this is akin to it. Last year, George Fry, last year Cal Waste sent a check to the county for over $200,000. I'd like to know where that money is.
It's not on the agenda.
No, I understand it's not on the agenda.
Clerk, the light's not on for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Pardon me?
It's fine.
What'd you say?
George,
no, wait a minute. I want to hear what he said. What'd you say? Mr. Clapp, I'm speaking to you. Well, you are one stubborn guy.
All right. All right. So, Mr. Les, you brought this item to us. It says administrative office.
Yeah, I have
Kathy.
Kathy Galino here, who really this has been one of her items.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well,
Kathy Galino, Economic Development. The Recycling Market Development Zone program is actually a marketing tool for Calaveras County. It's for businesses that use a waste product, whether it's plastic, wood, any type of waste stream that's going to our landfill, and manufacturing that into a new product, whether it be pellets, shavings, fire pellets. It is not a program that is a general fund program. It's actually funded through the state of California. Their Cal Recycle, which is their state, it's under EPA as one of their divisions. They provide low-interest loans for businesses up to $3 million that are located specifically in a recycling market development zone. Calaveras has not been a zone designated before. So there was a short window of opportunity to get this going in Calaveras County. They only open up the designation every 3 to 5 years. And being that there's concerns with tree mortality, with our solid waste folks having to deal with diversion mandates, I thought this would be a great program to attract business and grow business and help business expand. The only staff time is that I would need to do an annual report. It takes about 10 to 15 hours a year. So there's no general fund implication. More questions? Did I answer all of your questions?
It's only for businesses, not through public.
Correct.
And it's in addition to what already exists.
Correct. So it's to help augment our, we have county recycling facilities, transfer stations. We would work with haulers, Cal Waste being our one of our haulers here, and others. I'll be working to try and connect those waste streams and those haulers and those transfer stations and the landfill with businesses as feedstock for their manufacturing. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
Supervisor Mills?
What would be really cool is with this to include somewhere in the presentation the link to the RMDZ site for California. It's interesting that no other neighboring county in the foothills except for Placer County is part of this right now. We have Stanislaus County and San Joaquin County are. So, you know, we could probably learn from their best practices of what they're doing currently. But to know that, it means that we have a better opportunity to grab some pieces here. The state's going to offer those anyway, that our neighboring counties aren't taking advantage of. But thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Supervisor Olivero, your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Thank you for coming. A couple of quick questions, and this may or may not be involved with this program. Our recycling program here about a year and a half ago, under the state mandate with local vendors kind of closing up doors. Is this part of the funding for that type of program on a state level?
No, it is not.
Oh, this is out of that realm.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And I just want to make sure the public's aware of that because that, in my area, that was quite an issue. And this is not anything to do with our solid waste programs other than new businesses affording them an opportunity financially to get a good foothold. Is that correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's got a real.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Kathy, just a real quick question. I know that Cal Recycle's grant programs exclude anything to do with pyrolysis, so it limits a lot of opportunities for our wood waste. Now that we're part of the club of this, I'm hoping that you could make sure that maybe it's a policy of Cal Recycles, and maybe you could bring it up through other groups that they should really reconsider that, because I understand it goes back to a lot of stuff that happened in the 80s around plasma, garbage disposal. But if we could take that on as a group, maybe we'd have a bigger voice now that we're part of their team. Thank
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Just to answer one other question, the checks we receive from our recycling, from our garbage people that pick up the garbage, Cal Waste, that goes into the solid waste fund is where that money goes. It goes back into Public Works Solid Waste Fund. So just to answer that question. That being said, I'll look for a motion for this item.
So moved.
A motion by Supervisor Mills.
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. I did have public comment. I said we'll take, when Ronnie come up, I said I'll take all public comments and we'll answer all the questions at once. So. All right, moving on to item number 13.
Item 13 is from the Administrative Office to authorize the purchase of a used 2005 Genie 2668RT scissor lift and authorize a budget transfer in the amount of $9,500. Requires a 4/5 vote of the board.
My question was, what is a scissor lift and what department uses it?
Yes, a scissor lift is a metal platform that lifts somebody up higher into the air. This is for the facilities division. So, for instance, right now we're doing the paint project. Somebody can stand on that scissor lift. It elevates them up to that higher level. And yeah, so this would be for our facilities, not only for the paint project, but for window cleaning, servicing our lights in the parking lot, all of those things that require somebody to get up high where a ladder's not necessarily convenient or the best option.
And to go a little bit further on this, we were renting this piece of equipment, which is pretty normal from equipment rental places, and they wanted $5,400 for a month, which is not unusual. and a little over a month is what it was, the bill, and we were still using it, and then they offered to sell it to us for the price that's here. So we keep it, we have it. They came out and serviced it before we went into this agreement, so it's completely serviced, it's running fine. So it was a good deal, it really was.
Plus, I believe they backed the $5,400 that the rent back
Plus, we
towards
get back to $5,400. We do not have to pay them that rent. That's part of the purchase price. So it really was a good deal. All right. Any other public comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Look for a motion.
Well, before you do, Chair, I would like to also congratulate staff on this. This is a key piece of equipment considering all of the places within the facilities it could be used. You've got roofing coming up as a project. I can't imagine doing this large of a complex without having a piece of equipment like this. So opportunity strikes, and appreciate you taking advantage of the opportunity.
Any other board comments? If not, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Clapp. Second by Supervisor Garamendi. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, item number 18.
Item 18 is from the Human Resources Department to adopt a resolution authorizing the changes to the position control list for the Sheriff's Office Jail in fiscal year 2017-2018.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Judy Hawkins, Human Resources and Risk Director. I am bringing before you today a resolution making changes to the position control list, adding 4 correctional officers. We have had a great deal of turnover in this department, coupled with injuries, workers' comp, personal injuries, which has left a deficit, and the remaining officers having to cover long shifts, not being able to take days off, which this then again contributes to the turnover rate. So now we are stuck in this kind of this loop we can't get out of because of the hours that they're having to work. Then they're seeking positions elsewhere. For example, right now with the 28 positions that we have for correctional officers, corporals and sergeants, we have 7 positions that are either out or on light duty, which means no inmate contact. We have 3 positions right now that are leaving and 4 open positions. And this does not leave the proper coverage that the jail needs for their prospective shifts. They run 24/7. And then with adding the 4 positions, then we can have more coverage per shift. This is an immediate need. It's not something that can wait until budget. I do have the sheriff here also that can speak to the need per shift.
If we have 4 open positions now, what is adding 4 open positions going to accomplish? I think that would be the question most people going through their mind right now is we already have these open positions. Why are we adding more to it?
Having more people in background, being able to get them in, and having more people on staff to cover when we have illnesses and injuries, those type of things. And I'll let you speak to that.
I need to have at least 5 people in the jail at a time, and if you run a 24-hour program, it's very difficult to do that when you're running so short-staffed. To add those extra positions, when we have somebody who goes to leave, we can't fill a position until that person is gone. For instance, I have 2 people that are in the police academy right now that have transferred from the jail to the patrol side, so they're in the academy. I can't backfill those positions until they complete the academy. So that causes another deficit right there. So it behooves us to have those extra personnel. I actually have hired a firm that does outside backgrounds so that we can start expediting our backgrounds, because we were doing them all internally, and it's so time consuming. Per post, we have to have a 40-hour investment, and it takes a lot longer than just 40 hours to get somebody through a background program. So in answer to your question, we have 4 vacant positions. We're working on filling those. We just did a testing process. We have 7 people that we're starting to do the backgrounds on. But if I'm not able to have those extra positions, once I'm full, we still have people on vacation. You still have people that call in sick, people that get hurt. And that's where the problems have been arising, is that we have people that are down, as you well know, that there's always people hurt, vacation, whatever the issue may be. I need those extra people so that when we have these people out, we have the personnel to fill the holes. Right now, we're running with about 3 people, and it's not a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Any other, yes, Supervisor Miller?
Sheriff, you recall in May of last year when we got together, we were talking about your staffing situation, and I recommended at that time that we have 4 positions remain open, unfilled, always looking, always in the process. If you feel that that's not adequate because of the time constraints, because there is a processing time that's involved here, that maybe we need to take it to 6, but we need to keep those windows open and moving forward as we go. And I don't see an objection to doing that if that helps you with backfilling that deficit. If you're saying we can't process an application until somebody leaves, we should have some way of giving you that opportunity to start that process long before, as soon as you realize something's happening, that you can be in it and working on it without having a fear that you don't have a position available to work from.
And we did talk about that, and just so you know that you will see in 18-19 in my budget coming for 18-19, you'll see those other 2 positions. So you will see a total of 6.
So the goal will be 6.
Yes.
And we talked, you're right, we talked about that because I think that's a critical part of how do we get in front of your turnover situation.
And I got to tell you that I just was in D.C. for an event on Stepping Up program, something that we're pushing through the jail that's been working for our county as a whole. And there was 33 different counties throughout the United States there. There was, from California, there was us and Alameda County. Everybody else was from out of the state. And every person that I talked to from these other states have the same problem with the attrition, with retention, the hiring, the pay. It's not specific to California, and it's certainly not specific to us. Law enforcement as a whole, people are not wanting to get into. And the concern, and it's a realistic concern that I'm starting to see, is that we have these younger folks that aren't wanting to get into law enforcement. So as us older guys start retiring out down the road, who are we going to have to backfill these? Because people all have cell phones, people all videotape everything. So people aren't wanting to get into law enforcement because the private sector is paying more money. I was just telling Ms. Hawkins, I had 3 gentlemen who are talking about going to Santa Fe Pacific Railroad. These are cops that we have now that are looking to go into Santa Fe Pacific. They pay about $10,000 a year more. Their insurance is covered more. They work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or whatever hours they want to work. So there are other opportunities for these folks, and it's just, our world is changing in law enforcement from what it was back in the Stone Age when Mike was there.
I want to see his car.
Apparently they don't carry clubs anymore.
Yeah, the Bobby thing went away a long time ago.
I would also ask to consider that if you know that there are potential retirees coming up over the next 12 to 18 months, that also be plugged into this overall action plan.
When you'll see in my 18-19 budget, and I met with Mr. Lutz the other day, you'll see those numbers.
Okay.
Chair Toffanelli was there also. You will see those numbers, and that is the reason, is to try and get ahead of this game. Again, we're recruiting heavily. HR has been phenomenal in what they've been doing. We're actually looking at some outside agency for marketing, which not only will help the sheriff's office, could help the county as a whole. So we have a plan in place. Our hiring of local people has gone up considerably. We're getting a lot of the kids that are, they grew up in this area and they want to stay in this area. So we're hoping that we can get them on board and retain them.
Well, another piece of this puzzle is that although we're looking at salary savings because there's positions that are open and unfilled, and I understand that, the other side of it, and I think Ms. Hawkins thoroughly understands this, the cost of turnover is something that we oftentimes don't think about. In corporate, it was a natural. The first thing you did was look at what were the other costs that were involved in just her recruiting time and her processing time, and you're going through these background checks. These are not free.
Nope.
And so that has to be added in as an additional cost that you would not expend if you had somebody in the field working every day or in the jail working every day.
And we've talked about that in the past, and I actually have the numbers to show what it costs to do the hiring and everything that's involved in from start to finish when they start the process of doing the application and the people that are involved till the time they hit the streets as a solo deputy. It's anywhere between, depending on what's going on, 17 to 24, 25 months. It's a long process, and I've said this before in front of the board. When I was in construction, if I needed backhoe operators, I went down to the hall, picked up 10 guys out of the hall, took them and stuck them on backhoes because they knew what they were doing. This is a different process. And trying to get laterals to come to this department, again, they're typically going to be leaving a job that pays them more money. Why would they want to come somewhere where they're going to make less money? Now, some of them could come because of the area. That's what they want to do. We have 2 laterals that we're actually looking at, one of them coming out of Livingston that said, hey, I want to come to Calaveras County. But he only has 5 or 6 years left, and he's going to retire. So it's a short-term fix, but he's going to take a pay cut to do it.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is that if we understand what those turnover costs are, or what it takes to get somebody into our system, and be able to, the board and everybody else to clearly understand those costs, if we could also look very closely at those exits and understand why are they leaving, is there something that we need to do from our side that it would be an incentivizing them not leaving? What is, just having a real good, close discussion on what are the turnover reasons, and is there something that we could be doing differently to reduce that?
Well, we've talked about this in the past, and the turnover issue right now is that these guys are working so many hours, because you got to go back even when Mike was still working the streets with us. We had 3 11-hour shifts, which meant that at any time between about maybe 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon and 2 or 3 in the morning, we had almost 8 guys on the street. That makes our response times go down. You have more visual cops out there running around, and backup is a lot closer, so it's a safety issue for officers. Well, when the crunch of 08 came and we started losing people and we were actually cutting staff, we ended up having to go this 12-hour shift. Well, when you run a shift with 4 guys and one guy calls in sick and the other one's cat turned off his alarm clock and he's running late, it causes an issue. So my goal, and I've given this to Mr. Lutz, is I had a 5-year plan, is to get back to those 3 11-hour shifts so we have the staffing. But again, it takes 26 guys on patrol alone to fill those positions. We're running with 18, so we're a little bit shy of that. And again, we don't have those positions right now because back in 08, when we started having these positions being frozen.
Correctional officers.
Pardon me?
Correctional officers.
Okay, well, correctional officers is the same thing. Take the old jail. We had a jail that had a max capacity of 65. We have a jail now that has 160 capacity. We're running between 85 to 95, 100 people in that jail with less staff than we had in the old jail. So it's the same thing. You have attrition. You have people leaving. We have people going to Tuolumne. Tuolumne just stole another guy from us. $4 an hour or more. Drive time is the same for him. So we're running that same gamut as we are on patrol. Same thing with dispatchers. I have the same thing going on with dispatchers. People are leaving dispatch. So it's getting the positions, like you just talked about, to get ahead of the game so that those positions are available, so we're not having to wait for somebody to say, okay, here's my 2-week notice. Now I have 2 weeks to get HR to do the hiring process, and it's just not feasible. It takes too much time. So if we have those positions available, at least we can start the ball rolling. And again, the salary savings are going to be there because we're not going to fill all those positions at one time. It's not realistic to think that. But it gives us that jump ahead, so we're ready to go when somebody says, hey, we're leaving.
Are these generally open positions in terms of what they could potentially do, or are we specifying that they're corrections only, or that they're?
Well, no, what I'm looking at is correctional officers. You got to understand the thing about a correctional officer.
Because this says jail on here. I mean, would you still need additional positions for out in the field as well? Open positions?
We're talking specifically about the jail right now.
Yes.
And those correctional positions are for working in the jail.
And this is enough?
For now. And again, in 1819, I'm looking for another 2.
All right.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Sheriff, I really endorse what you're trying to do, and I understand the logic. I also appreciate what you're doing with the Explorer program in the schools. We get those kids working in corrections at 18. When they're 21, you could get them in the academy and really start trying to grow some of our own resources for long term. So,
and we still do go to the school, to Calaveras High, to their ROP police science class, and recruit, and that's where we get most of our explorers. The problem is, unfortunately, that program is going away. So now the school's going to shut that program down. So now we're back to how do we recruit? Well, again, using this outside service and what HR is doing, we can get these kids. We still have job fairs in the schools. We can still go to the schools and promote these kids because we can. We can put them in the jail at 18. It's a good stepping stone. It gives them a feel. It gives them some time in the county, saying we're working for the county, we're at home, and they're involved in their community. So it is a good stepping stone, and then we can move them out to the patrol side. It's, and Mike knows, and I'm sure some of you do know, that there are a lot of departments that you get hired on as a sworn deputy, but you start in the jail, you work in the jail for 4 to 5 years, and then they transfer you out to the street if you want to do that. We don't have that program here, but with the help of HR, we have modified that program to where if you work in the jail, down the road, we will send you to the academy to make you a peace officer. So that's one of the benefits that we have that we can give to our correctional officers now, that they have that ability. It's an incentive.
And some are taking advantage of it.
And absolutely they are. Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair. Sheriff, thanks for coming in this morning. What happens when you don't have enough correctional officers to man the needs of the jail? Are we mandated by state laws, statutes, to have X number of correctional officers for X number of inmates?
We are under Title 15. We are mandated to have certain amount of correctional officers. The issue that we're running into right now is our female correctional officers. Like Ms. Hawkins said, we have 4 of them that are out, and we can't book a female in. We can't move a female with a male. It always has to be with another female. So that's the critical part right now, is we're down on our female officers. But yes, to answer your question, we have a certain amount that we have to have in the jail at all times.
Well, what happens when you don't have that amount of correctional officers? Do you bring deputies in to work the jail?
I actually have a female deputy that is working overtime right now to work in the jail to make up for those females that we don't have. We don't typically bring in outside deputies to work in the jail. One, because they don't have the training in there. The female that we have that's working in the jail used to work in our jail. She was one of those that transferred out and became a deputy through that program that we just talked about. But again, we just can't use outside deputies to go there. And they're in that same position. This is where they're wanting to leave, is they're working. They're working a lot of overtime, and they're getting burned out. I have one that's actually leaving. She's following her boyfriend to Arizona. So, I mean, there's not much you can do about that kind of stuff. But they're going other places to make more money. Like I said, I just lost one. I've lost 3 to Tuolumne. I'm losing another one, it looks like, here soon. And it's a pay issue. Part of it, but not all of it.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to open up to public comments.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. There are several things. I think Sheriff's doing a good job trying to handle this thing when with so much not under his control. There's something else going on. Apparently in Angels Camp, they have budget problems. They're trying to maintain a police department, an independent police department, even though the county provides dispatch services. And they're spending like $1.6 million dollars. There's a number of taxpayers in Angels Camp wondering why we have the sheriffs going through the town, and we also have a separate police force. And those police force members like being in the gold country. They're not interested in moving away. It might be a good time for our county and the city to talk a little bit about perhaps turning more over to the sheriff's department. This would solve the problem with having dedicated officers that want to be here, and there's certain things you need to do. One of them is to check on the difference between salaries. And we agree with Dennis Mills' comments about having a real thorough exit interviews with people that leave. I don't know if the interviews are being done by supervisory personnel or if they're done separately with HR or some other way. The person would want to share their thoughts on improving the sheriff's department if their reasons for leaving don't want to be officially disclosed. But you never know that information unless you're able to have that thorough exit interview. And as far as salary changes, there should be a study, for instance, on the salaries in Tuolumne County and in our county to see how competitive are we? We just said, oh, we discovered they left for better money. Well, why didn't we know that? Okay, we need to really analyze if that is the problem. We need to correct that. Make sense? Thank you.
George Fry. About 9 years ago, I went to the city council, and they were $1,400,000 in the red. And I worked with the then sheriff, Gary, and we sat down and talked about them disbanding the police department and using that facility as a substation for sheriff's deputies to go up and down the hill to Arnold and down to Copperopolis. And they would have saved $1.4 million. They're into their own control, and they wouldn't go for it. But it's interesting now that they want to raise the sales tax so that they have funding for their city, and they don't get it, you know. This is it makes the most sense for everybody involved.
Hi, I'm Bruce Judici, District 5, Valley Springs. In the process of looking up salaries for CCWD based on their rate increase, and I was looking for admin salaries, there's a website called Transparent California where public salaries are posted, and you can go and find Amador County, Tuolumne County, CCWD, the place where I work, ATCA. You can find individuals' names, their titles, their base pay, their overtime, and how much benefits they get, how much individually they get paid. And most of the salary information on that website is through 2016, for 2016 data. San Joaquin County actually has 2017 data there, which is pretty quick. But Calaveras County hasn't updated theirs since 2013. And if we wanted to take a look at what sort of salaries if we want to compare apples to apples, if we want to see how much Tuolumne County is paying their sheriffs as compared to what Calaveras County is paying on an up-to-date basis, I would like to see us somehow update that database so that we can see 2014, 15, and 16 data there, so that we can, as citizens, understand when we're hearing that we're paying less than what other counties are. We can compare that with how much overtime is being paid, and we can also take a look at not just sheriffs, but it's the entire county, so you can see how much administrative staff is being paid. And I think that would give citizens a better idea as to how much money is being spent. Thanks. It's called Transparent California. You can Google it. Thanks.
Any other public comments?
Susan Morris, District 4. It just occurred to me, and it has over the past when we've talked about these salaries. And I know at one point, I think it was Burlingame, where somebody compared our salary rate to Burlingame, and I think there was something like a $40,000 difference. I'm sure you people know how much it costs in other counties to live. So when you're talking about $40,000 to move to Burlingame is nothing per year. The housing is, if they left here and moved to the San Jose and that Bay Area, the lower Bay Area, I mean, rent is $5,000, $6,000 a month. A one bedroom is $2,000 or $3,000 a month. That doesn't count gas, food, and everything else. It is substantially less to live in Calaveras County than it is to a lot of these other places. Now, the comparison between Tuolumne, that's a different story, and there must be some other issue that's having people move over there. And maybe we should look at that. But some of these places, we really have to be careful to look at what the cost of living is, because it's very low here compared to other counties. That's all I wanted to say.
Other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close public comments and bring it back to staff.
All right, I would like to speak to wages. And of course, HR, we did a very thorough salary study when we were going through negotiations to compare the wages. And of course, we can't always compare our wages to larger areas because of the cost of living, the revenue of larger counties, all of those items. We did look at Tuolumne, and once all of our equities and COLAs go through, we will be competitive with Tuolumne. But all of our increases, of course, do not go through at once, and so it will take a little bit of time for us to be truly competitive. Also, we're not always comparing apples to apples. Sometimes when our staff is recruited from other areas, they may be going in at a step higher than what they are here. And so that may also contribute to the increase. And that's a case that was explained to me on one of these. The person is going in at a higher step than what they're getting paid here, and so that's why they will be paid several dollars an hour more. We gave CCPSEA, which is the union that our correctional officers belong to, some very good equity increases. Our correctional officers will have been given a 10% equity increase. 5% has already been, was given in March, and then in September they will receive the other 5%. They received a 2% COLA in February, and then they will receive another 2% COLA in July, or 1% COLA in July, and a 2% COLA at the beginning of the year in January. So we are trying to actively get our staff to a competitive rate, but it does take time, and we definitely are competitive. We'll be competitive with Tuolumne once this plays through. And I think the sheriff has something to say.
Yeah, I'd like to caution people who go to Cover California to look at salaries. It is not a very accurate cost, because what that does is it takes in doesn't take in just your base salary that you as a person gets paid. It takes in the weighted cost that it costs the county. For a fact, I know that one year I made about $50,000, and if you go to California, I made like $83,000. So please don't rely on those. If you want to get a cost of what you're looking at, you can go to any county sheriff's office's webpage and find out what they're paying their deputies, as you can in Calaveras County. Everything is posted. It's all public information. So that's the place to go. And when you talk about the cost of living to the Bay Area, Susan, the thing you need to understand is we're not losing people to the Bay Area. I've lost one guy to the city of Hayward. Where they're going is Manteca, Modesto, Stockton, Sacramento, Elk Grove, and those are all places that are within driving distance. These people still live in our county, and they're working outside of the county. So don't consider that. And when we go back to the jail, which is what topic we're on, I'm losing more people to the California State Division of Corrections than I'm at anywhere else, because they start out at about $83,000 a year, which is damn near, well, it's more than double what my correctional officers start here. And I know that we can't compete with that. I'm not expecting you guys to be able to compete with that. We have to go back to the lifestyle that we have in our county and that the people want to live here. But again, we still have people that work here or live here and they're commuting to CDCR. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll bring it back to the board.
Just to add some clarity, Chair, Transparent California is responsible for their own data collection and their data on their websites. It is not a responsibility of any government to provide. They have to ask for it. So if it's not updated for us, it's only because they haven't asked for it. I just wanted to be sure. I am very familiar with that site.
Okay. Any other board comments? If not, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Supervisor Mills. I have a second.
Second.
A second by Supervisor Garamendi. Any other comments from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
seeing there's a motion on the table and seconded, I am going to take a position of abstention because of personal reasons. I have a family member that's in the employment of the Sheriff's Department in the correctional field.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0.
One abstention.
4-0, one abstention. All right. Moving on to item number 19. Madam Clerk.
Item 19 is from the Office of Emergency Services to receive an update on the status of the Murphy's Drive Disaster Recovery Project and provide staff direction.
Good morning, Board. Michelle Patterson, Director of the Office of Emergency Services. At the regularly scheduled meeting of March 27th, we had a presentation on the status of the Murphy's Drive. Yes. Sure. Okay.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Sure. We had a presentation from Public Works regarding the Murphy's Drive culvert crossing project that was affected by the 27 winter storms. At that meeting, several options were discussed and sort of given an overview of cost and different things. Since then, we did receive notification actually 2 days after that meeting on March 29th that FEMA had awarded or obligated that project. It had been hung up in whatever environmental reviews had been going on with that. So we did get FEMA participation with that project. Also, since then, we've brought on Quincy Engineering, and I have Earl Seberg here with me today, along with Jeff Krovitz. And on April 4th, Quincy Engineering was out at this site scoping the project. And so Earl from Quincy is here today to present to you an update on the Murphy's Drive culvert crossing project.
Good morning, Earl Seberg, Quincy Engineering. I'm going to hand this to Diane, and these are thank you very much. Again, we were out there on April 4th. We did meet with Supervisor Oliveira there, so thank you for joining us. A little background, of course, the existing 48-inch double-barrel culverts were washed out in the storms of January 17, and we lost the roadway. The community served by Murphy's Drive has restricted access through Flanders Drive, and therefore creating a bottleneck through that area. Of course, the county's made this a very high priority, and we're working to address the issues with that. On our preliminary field review, we did look at the site carefully, noted the condition of the existing opening, and our previous culverts were determined to be undersized by a factor of 3 to 4. Right now, we're not recommending a replacement in kind. We are recommending that a single cell open bottom system be used. We preliminarily scoped out a 6 by 12 alternative. We're looking at a precast concrete system as the basis for that right now, but we have to put some alternatives together in terms of for a contract. The lead times for these materials are a consideration in the systems that we've looked at. It's anywhere from 72 hours to 5 to 6 months. So, of course, the 5 to 6 months really isn't a valid alternative in this situation. Once we have the engineering data available, we will go through and reevaluate these systems to ensure that we've got the system that is both the best cost and best schedule for this project. Again, everything that we've done is based on our field review without engineering studies. We are working to do that. We want to thank the community. One of the first things we had to do was get rights of entry to 4 parcels. We received the last right of entry yesterday, and we thank the community for their involvement. Both Director Patterson and myself made phone calls, reached out to those property owners, and we were very effective in getting them engaged and moving forward. So we really appreciate the community's involvement at this point. Right now, again, preliminary cost on this is roughly $860,000, $300,000 for the engineering, $400,000 for the actual construction, and then another $160,000 for environmental monitoring and construction support. Environmental monitoring is a key component of that. That's about $60,000 because we have species, frog species and things of that. So that monitoring will be required during construction. Put out a preliminary schedule, which is a schedule I'm not happy with today, and we're working to beat that schedule. But it is the schedule we have at the moment based on the information available. We now have rights of entry. Surveying and mapping is scheduled for next week, or surveying is scheduled for next week, and we'll continue the mapping to complete that in early to mid-May. We have to have our hydraulics studies done, which will refine the volume of water going through that area so that we can properly size the culverts. The one thing that we have before us is the design standards for this contract are based on county code, which refers to the Caltrans Highway Design Manual, which gives us a 100-year storm event as the storm that we're trying to pass. So that establishes the flow rate and ultimately the size of the culvert. We want to try to advertise this contract no later than July 1st and certainly earlier if it's available. And then start construction, and we're looking at trying to accelerate the construction through a variety of means. The one thing that is encouraging in this is that the environmental elements are not going to be a factor in our schedule. Because this contract or this location is statutorily exempt from CEQA and NEPA, we don't have to go through an environmental document process. CEQA does require a notice of exemption, which is something that we will assist the county with in preparing. It's a fairly short lead time element. I think it's a 1 or 2 page document, and we'll work to help the county get that filed. We need to obtain any permits within 2 weeks after beginning construction, so that is not a construction critical path. We also will be working with the Native American tribes in the area as we get closer to construction to let them know what the process is. Some of the critical issues, of course, rights of entry. This was on here, and we received the last one yesterday. Site utilities, we'll be working with the water district to protect that utility and size our culverts appropriately. We want to design what we consider an open source design for this and allow alternatives and encourage alternatives through schedule and other elements. This keeps us out of the sole source environment, which is a problem for both FEMA and others. And we certainly need to involve FEMA in this. So with that, and in conclusion, again, this is our very, very first cut at this without the benefit of the engineering studies. As we move through this, we want to beat these estimates and this schedule. And we'll be bringing that back to you as we move forward.
Any board questions, comments? Supervisor Garamendi?
Thank you. Thank you, Earl. I have a couple questions and some concerns, not about getting this task done, because I think it's important for the community to have that. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that it's $460,000 to do engineering and oversight, and only $400,000 to do the actual work, construction work, which
Understand.
I'm sure there's reasons for it, but it looks pretty bad.
Understand.
The question I've got is really two of them. The first one is the order of tasks. We were able to get this assessment done pretty quickly, yet this event happened almost 18 months after the Butte fire, which we have not gotten any assessments back on yet. So can you tell me how or when we're going to see the Butte fire road assessments and how this jumped ahead in the queue?
Working with the county, we were asked to prepare this for today's meeting, and we are working to prepare the other elements for the next board meeting.
I see. Second question is, you mentioned that the bridge, the replacement as it was not adequate, nor was it done to county standards. You were part of meetings in my first week here where we discussed when we rebuild the Butte fire roads, that we could not rebuild them to county code because that would be considered an improvement and not being able to be reimbursed by FEMA. So my question is, has FEMA's policy changed, or did we have bad information? And are we actually going to be able to rebuild the roads to county standards when we redo the Butte fire roads?
We're reviewing that element now. FEMA is only allowing repairs at this point. We have identified alternatives that may be more cost effective, and we're going to continue to study those alternatives in our alternative selection process. Whether it gets to county standards, that's a discussion we'll have to have with FEMA. Initially, we have heard that they will only pay for repairs.
Well, I know that I've made this statement innumerable times now.
Yes.
But we can't build things, we can't build things that aren't to our own standard. We set the standards, and there's uniform building codes. We can't do things that don't meet that.
Yes.
So I certainly hope we won't do that on this project, and I hope we won't do that on the Butte fire. But if that's unreimbursable, we need to see that here in the budget, because
Yes.
that's not, of our options, option number one, where we continue this project and then get full reimbursement, that wouldn't be correct if that was the case. Michelle?
Absolutely.
So I do want to speak to this just briefly. What we have from FEMA is sort of an estimate that they came up with, a scope of work and an estimate that they came up with at the time that they did that. I don't have that in front of me, but one of the things that Quincy is going to be assisting me in doing is doing what's called a reversion request, which will take into account the better information that we're developing, putting together the scope of work and the project costs, and then seeing there is a little bit of wiggle room, and working with Cal OES to try and identify sort of the best path in meeting from both ends, right? Because there's what's the betterment and what's sort of the need. So we will be going through that process with Murphy's simultaneously as we go through the rest of the process to deal with that site. So there may be opportunity to sort of do more than just the repair work, but we have to wait and see on that one.
And that will be brought to us before we approve this project on how that's going to be, right? We're either going to make improvements on our dime or it's going to fall on the Fed's dime, but we'll know that before we commit dollars, correct?
Perhaps not. I have to go through the process with FEMA and Cal OES to submit the reversion request, and that does take a little bit of time, but I have to use the information that Quincy provides in order to document the request. So whether or not we're able to say today or in the future, go ahead and do this and we'll work the FEMA process, I can't say that today. So, it would be a matter of having that conversation, having that dialogue with Cal OES and with FEMA through the reversion request process.
Well, I certainly hope we know that answer before we committed almost $1 million towards the project. And I am very disappointed that we were not able to get Butte fire roads moved as quickly as this was moved. And I'm disappointed with that because we've been asking a very long time.
This one was asked as a result of the public comment, not only at the March 27th meeting, but at a
Well,
meeting
if
prior to
public
that.
comment's what we need,
so-
I'll fill this room. I'm hoping we'll do it because it's our duty.
Supervisor Olivera, your light's on?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, there's no guarantee that we're going to have reimbursement for the $860,000 bill that's estimated to make this repair. Is that correct, Earl?
Until the reversion request is complete, you're right.
It's a moving target.
It's a moving target right now.
And as that target moves, we develop more information.
Correct.
We'll have a better answer to what's going to happen.
We want to bring these costs
Quincy
down.
is in charge of the Butte Fire repair systems too.
That's correct.
Is there an estimation of how much damage that is? I heard the number $8 million, $6 million. Does that sound familiar?
I've got to separate those costs in my mind. It's somewhere around $4 million for the non-ER roads, which are essentially the heart of the fire, the 5 roads that are the federal aid roads through FHWA, our Sheep Ranch, Mountain Ranch, Frico City, Jesus Maria Railroad Flat. The other roads are that
Chair?
$4 million.
We're drifting way off the subject matter here, and I
We are a
think,
little bit, so I'm going to allow a little bit more, but
Okay.
let's try and stay on track.
Yes.
when we
All
can.
right, and I'll finish this one, just last comment. That's kind of a moving target also, isn't it?
Correct.
Is there any targets in that storm damage that we can say is stable, that we can take a good shot at with a number?
Well, this is our best one right now. We're working on Canyon View as well as the other elements that are out there in the storm damage right now as well. So we're putting all that together right now after this initial review, and we're going to bring that back on the May 8th board meeting.
Okay. I did have the opportunity to go out there with you. Thank you very much for mentioning that. I'd like to thank the public, the residents in that area, your team, Quincy. Well, on that date of inspection, ladies and gentlemen, there was no less than 12 people out there, all doing a different job in their expertise. And I'm quite surprised and grateful that this information came to this meeting. You did a good job, folks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on?
Yes, thank you for being here today, Earl. The reason I'm passing my phone around is I took a picture. I almost could leap across that.
Did you ever pass to come in my district?
But it's, what, about 16 feet across?
Roughly 16
Maybe 20
feet.
most?
Yeah, about 10 feet deep roughly because the logs are there.
And I think the question that really the board has to determine is whether or not, because there's going to be parts of this that aren't going to be covered by FEMA if we do it right. And I think Supervisor Garamendi's track is correct in that we can't just accept that putting it back the way it was is the best answer.
Absolutely.
And if we look at that and we say, if we do it the right way the first time, and it may cost us something from our side, we've got something that's 40, 50, 100 years down the road good.
Correct.
And we don't deal with it again. If we put it back the way it was, we're going to deal with this again. That's the
Absolutely.
reality.
Absolutely.
So I think the board has to just answer the question is, what costs are they willing to put up without a guarantee from FEMA that we will get them back?
Right.
And understanding that maybe make it better is the better answer, no matter what the cost might be right now, because this is future generations we're talking about and future budgets that we're talking about.
That's
And I think we need to clearly understand that with any project we go into, that FEMA might not be the best answer. And if we have, and I think Mr. Krovitz could probably answer the question. I was looking down at his phone right now. It's just how many bridges are out there that potentially could require a temporary or portable bridge. And if we do like Sierra County and some of these other counties, and we have that option available to us, we may have to bite the bullet and do that just as a protection to public safety in our communities. So I just hope that we want to move forward with making a decision today to let's get on this project so we can get this done by the end of this year and get some normalcy back to the residents in 14 and 15.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll open up the public comments.
Alsagala Taxpayer Association. I also agree that the relationship between preliminary engineering and final design of $300,000 to a construction cost of $400,000 doesn't seem to match. Perhaps the Director of Public Works would have better information on what that relationship ought to be, and also if there's exceptional work needed to be done in design, if that could be looked at a little closer. There was some discussion about temporary bridges that are pre-designed to handle a load that can be put in quickly. The question I have, well, if we go that route, it's a lot cheaper. Is it possible to modify those temporary bridges to make them permanent ones? Thank you.
Any other public comment?
I just had a question, and maybe I've missed it not being at a previous meeting, but where is Murphy's Drive? It's connected, I guess, with Moran Road, which I know that's up by Avery, I think, in Arnold. But are people not being able to get to their homes or their properties? What's the background on this?
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Supervisor Oliveira, would you like to answer that question?
I turned my light on, Mr. Chair.
I saw you did.
Susan, as you go up Highway 4 and right in Avery where Moran Road, known as Lower Moran Road, intersects, you'll take the right-hand turn going east on Moran Road. You'll go approximately 2/3 of the way on Moran Road, and Murphy's Drive will be intersecting on the right-hand side. That roadway has been washed out, and there's only approximately 200 feet of roadway there before the stream has washed out, the culvert is washed out. If you continue on Moran Road, you'll go to the next access road, which is Flanders Drive, into that area of what they identify as Blue Lake Springs 14, 15, and 16. There is a community back in there. Pine Brook actually is just located to the east of it, so there's a substantial number of residences back there. If you'll continue on Moran Road, probably for another 2 to 3 miles less, you'll run into Sequoia Woods Country Club, and that's what's called Upper Moran Road. Does that give you a reference of where this is at?
Right, so yes, it does. So this washed out road, then the people then can't get through. Is it a public safety issue?
Here's what's happened. On the original damage, and Mr. Krovitz, if I make an error, please save my bacon. On the original damage that occurred in January of 2017 where this washed out, we looked at this situation. We notified FEMA originally, and they indicated that that wasn't an emergency situation because the residents had access to their residence via Flanders Road. Now, that added commute time, that added some difficulty as far as getting emergency equipment in there. We've heard from the Ebbets Pass Fire Department on how difficult it is to get safety equipment in there, and that's been ongoing since the storm damage. There is access, but you have to spend some extra time getting to it, and it does present some travel restrictions to our safety equipment, fire engines, things of that sort. It could be a public safety issue, and I'm going to be quite frank and say it is a public safety issue, being in the public safety issue game, if you will, as a deputy. Response time is very important back then. I did work that area during the severe snowstorms, and access in that particular area was very difficult. I truly believe we have an emergency situation with the Murphy's Drive Bridge, or the Murphy's Drive overcrossing being washed out. Am I correct, Mr. Grovis? I'm getting old. I don't know if my memory is going to serve me.
It's only one thumb up. It's not a 2 thumb up.
It must be my date.
All right. I have a couple questions, Earl. I kind of saved for the last. When we had the last meeting on this, this item, we talked about sending an RFP out that had a design build section to it in order to expedite this project. Yet I'm seeing cost here for final design. Is that still part of what we're looking at doing when we send an RFP out? Because right now, the idea was to expedite it. It would be expedited versus spending the time for the design and draft of it. I don't see that anywhere on this item. And then when you're talking about precast 6 by 12, we're talking about multiple pieces, 6 by 12, being placed in place with a crane. Is that not correct?
To address the second question first, yes, they're 24 feet long, so we're looking at 2 pieces. So, and that will fit in there nicely, we believe. We still have to have the information with respect to the utility so we can ensure we clear that and be able to protect that in place.
And I just wanted to clarify that,
Yeah.
because it just, so people understand, it's not just a 6 by 12 piece of precast going in there,
No.
and that's it. No, it's multiple pieces.
It's multiple pieces.
Yeah. Okay.
The respect to design build, we have evaluated that. We haven't followed up in any or received any direction from staff to proceed in that area. That in my assessment of design build and other alternatives, you typically use that when you have a larger, more complicated project, and this is small and fairly compact. It does add another procurement process on top of everything else we're doing, which impacts staff. And there are other, depending on what we come up with, we may be able to pre-purchase some of the elements, such as the box, if there's a lead time issue on that, and have those available as county furnished materials as part of the contract. And that's probably the most expeditious way to proceed with this project at this point. And that's my recommendation back to the county.
All right, thank you. Any other board questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion to move this item on.
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion.
We have 3 options here. What are we voting on?
Thank you.
And let me just make a statement. I'm not against this at all, but until we take on the project that happened 2.5 years ago, actually, which we're losing money because we haven't done the work on, until we get that, I'm not going to support any of this stuff. I mean, we're just ignoring the Butte Fire roads, and they've been ignored. Doesn't matter how much we talk up here. It seems if you fill the room, you get to the front of the line. My people have lost a lot of homes, and the roads are destroyed, and we need this done. If that's what it takes to move this to the front, I thought we were being delayed because there was a lot of work to be done, but obviously there's time for other projects first.
Thank you. So I have a motion, but it wasn't clarified on what the motion was.
1, 2, or 3.
Mr. Chair, I withdraw my motion.
You withdraw your motion?
And would seek some clarification on an issue to make a motion on. Options 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah, it's right here.
Could I just ask for some clarification? Are we talking about options 1, 2, and 3 being in the staff memo? Are we talking about options 1, 2, and 3 being in this handout? Could you just give me a little bit more?
It's on the board packet.
Okay, thank you.
It's on the board packet, but any motion, I mean, I'm just looking for a motion
Okay.
that clarifies.
You want to take a minute?
Perhaps I can,
Could we take a minute?
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
perhaps I can
The
help
information is more detailed in the
provide
packet.
clarity to. Really, the piece that we're most looking at here, when this originally came up, it was unclear on the FEMA reimbursement. And at that point, the board had directed staff to move forward, even with the assumption of us not potentially receiving the FEMA reimbursement, but what options might we have to get this bridge done? Subsequent to that, we did get additional information in that FEMA did move forward. They approved or they did the NEPA exemption and really opened the door for us to move forward on this project. What I think we're most looking for is, do we continue down the FEMA path, which is the assumption that we're operating under, in which case we would proceed as outlined by Quincy. That RFP would be issued, and that would come back to the board, obviously, before final approval. Or do we go down the alternative route, fund it locally through local dollars with the idea that we might not be able to get reimbursement for part or all of this project?
That's the way I understood it, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion to move option 2
On the board packet.
on the board packet, which reads,
Can you read that?
continue work on an improved replacement, $450,000 to $475,000, including engineering studies, replacement scope of work, and environmental clearances. We may want to read options 1 and 3, if you'll have the board clerk do that.
Well,
So
it's your motion.
That's sufficient.
I move option 2, and that would be what we just read.
So we have a motion to proceed.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify?
Sure.
I've got discussion summary items 1 through 3, and I've got alternatives at the end of the memo 1 through 3. And 2 is not the same as the alternatives. So are we going off to the discussion summary numbers or off to the quoted alternative that are put in front of us?
I'm looking to Michelle, since I didn't write the item, and that's what I was asking the intent.
Alternatives here at the bottom.
So, let's see.
Versus this is a discussion piece.
So both 1 and 2 on the discussion summary involve committing local dollars to this project. If we go with option 3, then we proceed with the FEMA route. And so you're correct in that the alternatives don't necessarily match the discussion, but the alternatives are that we continue to fund this project using the FEMA avenue, or we fund it locally. So if you wish to provide direction either on continuing with the FEMA process or
Mr. Chair, can
funding
we
this
have county
locally.
council chime in?
I'll tell you what, we'll take a 5-minute break.
There you go.
And we'll come back in 5 minutes, and we'll have, let Supervisor Oliveira have a discussion with county council and county administrative officer and find which direction he would like to make the motion, since it's in his district. So, okay? Perhaps Michelle can be involved in that. How's that? All right, we're back in session. Supervisor Oliveira, would
Yes.
you like to withdraw your motion?
Mr. Chair, I do withdraw the motion at this time.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Mr. Chair, I think we need to hear from staff regarding clarification of the issues in front of us as far as this particular agenda item. I would defer to Michelle Patterson.
Thank you. Staff at this point, inclusive of myself, is recommending that we continue to go down the path utilizing FEMA for the reimbursement part of this. There will continue to be costs that as part of the county match, but that's our recommendation at this time.
CEO Lutz, do you have any addition to that?
No, I think, as Michelle stated, that the key here that we're looking for in our recommendation is that the board continue down the path of seeking reimbursement through FEMA down the outlined path, and continue pursuing that reversion request, but at the same time don't stop this multi-threaded process of getting the RFP developed and ready to hit the streets as soon as possible. And again, we can bring these back to the board at these decision points to make sure that everybody is aware of any changes or the most up-to-date information.
Does that clarify enough for you? Supervisor Mills, your light's on. You have a question?
Just a question, our county match is at 6.75 or 25, what is the number?
Let's see, FEMA pays for 75.
So it's 25%?
CDA does 25, well, not the full 25.
Yeah.
But there will be a county match percentage.
Okay.
6
Thank
point
you.
something. 6.25.
Yeah, 6.25 is what we talked about for you.
And Mr. Lutz, has the county, based on a motion made regarding this issue, would the county be committed to spending any funds that are not recoverable or reimbursable at this time?
For clarity, we do have a match, as just stated. That would be the county portion. Outside of unrecoverable costs at this point, we're not aware of any. Now, again, a lot's going to depend on what they come back and say on their reversion request, which we are going to be working closely on. And before we make a final decision on that, obviously bring that back to the board for consideration.
Okay, and that's for purpose of clarity. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, are you prepared to make a motion based on the information that staff has just presented?
I am.
Okay.
I am. I so move that we continue as presented, especially with the latest information from staff regarding the continuation of the process, continuation of reimbursement, and with full knowledge that we're going to be looking at different things as they change, and also that at this time the county has not committed any funds that has not been subject to reimbursable by FEMA so far, as per the statement of CIO Lutz. I know that's kind of confusing, but we had to cover a lot of issues. That's my motion.
That's a long motion.
I tried the short one, it didn't work.
All right, so Madam Clerk, are you clear on that motion? Okay, so I'm looking for a second. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Not?
I'd like to make a comment. I understand exactly where Jack's coming from. It's very frustrating. But on the other hand, is we still represent the whole county. Because Jack, I agree, I have the same problems in my district, but this is a countywide issue too.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Passes 4-1. At this time, it's about 2 minutes to 12 on one clock and 12 o'clock high on the other clock. So we will break for lunch until 1:30. We will come back at 1:30.